On our planet at all times, there have been people who have committed crimes. Among them are many maniacs, serial killers, criminal authorities. Some of them were declared insane, others were in their right mind. Films and books are being made about such crazy personalities as Jack the Ripper, whose name is inscribed in world history nowadays. There are also many dangerous people in the world who terrify the public with their terrible deeds. Today, I will show you the top most dangerous criminals. Pedro Alonso Lopez. This terrible man, born on the territory of Colombia, can be safely called the most terrible killer on earth. He killed more than 300 people, including both men and women. Moreover, Lopez himself called such a figure and admitted that he had killed so many people with his own hand. The killer appears in the Guinness Book of Records as a man who took the life of the largest number of people in the history of mankind with his own hands. This gives reason to consider him the most dangerous person in the world. Pedro operated on the lands of Ecuador, Colombia, Peru. The police could not prove his involvement in more than 50 crimes. Otherwise, the number of his victims would have increased even more. The biography of this man is simply terrible. It can be ranked among the saddest stories in the world. His mother worked as a prostitute. There were 12 other children in the family besides Pedro. When he was 8, his parents drove him away because of a sexual relationship with his sister. Then he got to a pedophile who bullied the boy. Further, Pedro had to endure sexual harassment from a school teacher. As a teenager, he grew up on the street, engaging in petty theft and banditry. As an adult, Lopez sought out the people who had bullied him as a child and killed them with extreme cruelty. After he was arrested, the court commuted the sentence, giving him 8 years. As he took into account the terrible circumstances of his childhood, after leaving prison, Pedro began to rape and kill young girls. Despite the fact that this man was a very dangerous criminal, he had one rule: not to attack girls who were Colombian by nationality. Presumably, this saved many people from a terrible death. It's strange, but a man who killed such a huge number of people received only 20 years in prison for his actions. After he served 14 of them, he was transferred to a psychiatric hospital. Jack the Ripper. The name of Jack the Ripper is inscribed in world history. Books have been written about his crimes. The figure of this man is the subject of many studies. People engaged in history, writing novels, as well as detectives from all over the world have been looking for facts and evidence for a long time that can open the mystery of the crime of the century. The name of Jack the Ripper is surrounded by many legends. Because his identity has not yet been established, this name, which has become a household name, is conditional, since the criminal was not found. Jack the Ripper was the name of a dangerous maniac who killed London prostitutes and left characteristic traces at the crime scene. This happened at the end of the 19th century. The scene was the slums of the Whitechapel area. The girls were found brutally murdered. Many had their internal organs removed and their bodies disfigured. Based on many clues, the police concluded that the corpses were left by the same person. Poverty and rampant crime were characteristic of that time. More than 60 brothels operated on the territory of London. This gave a man who hunted prostitutes ample opportunities. The police believed that the dangerous criminal belonged to the upper strata of society, since the nature of the autopsy of the bodies indicated the presence of medical education and surgical practice. Also, the department periodically received letters from this man, where he described the details of the murders. John Wayne Gacy. John Wayne Gacy is a well-known serial killer among the American audience, who is a sex maniac. Like many of these people, he was born into a dysfunctional family. His father drank, beat his wife. Plus, he had a friend who harassed a young John. As an adult, John tried to start a family, got married, got a job as a manager. However, it soon turned out that he was pestering subordinates. I must say that before that, young Gacy worked in the morgue, but he was fired on suspicion of performing sexual acts with corpses. Soon he began to show homosexual tendencies and then killed his lover. This incident was the beginning of a long chain of rapes and murders. The police did not arrest John for a long time, as he was a respected member of society and did not arouse their suspicions. Gacy performed at children's parties dressed up in a clown costume. Rodney Alcala. Rodney Alcala is another maniac. From the list of the most dangerous criminals in the whole world, he was quite a creative person, which distinguishes him from other people from this top. Rodney graduated from art school, had a high level of intelligence, he was fond of photography. Later, he found a huge collection of women's and children's photos. Alcala killed many people after raping them. Often they were teenagers who could not resist an adult man. Rodney took part in the popular American show Dating Game, a video about which can be found on the internet. The number of victims of the maniac reaches 130 people. Joshua Bly. The story of Joshua Bly is as terrible as it is absurd. This is an African military from Liberia who has earned the nickname Naked-Ass General in the world. He became famous for forcing his people to fight naked, and also mocked them in every possible way. Many of them were minors. Joshua forced teenagers to take drugs, alcohol, and they also made human sacrifices after the ritual. People ate the child who had been killed before. It is interesting that such a dangerous person has not yet been arrested, but lives in Liberia with his family. Jack Unterweger. Like all dangerous criminals, Jack had a middle name: Jack the Poet. The Viennese Strangler. His fans were amazed after finding out that their favorite writer turned out to be a killer of prostitutes. Jack's first victim was a waitress. He met her in a bar. She was later strangled by Unterweger. The murderer was arrested and jailed for 15 years. In prison, the criminal did not waste time and wrote a book with his autobiography, and thanks to this book, Jack became famous and rich. He began to be considered a reformed model prisoner. After being released, Jack the Poet committed murders again. The crimes were solved and the criminal was arrested, but the case did not come to trial. The Viennese Strangler hanged himself in his own cell. Dennis Rader. The whole family became the first victims of Dennis Rader. Before the murder, he cut the telephone wires in the victim's house. Then he made his way into the house, where he strangled the couple with a rope from the curtains and their 9-year-old son with a package, and the murderer hanged his 11-year-old daughter. During the period of 1974 to 1991, a dangerous criminal killed about 10 people after another crime. Dennis sent a letter with poems to the newspaper's editorial office. Once some teenagers wanted to take the blame for the sake of fame, but the Raider denied these attempts of minors to journalists. Until 2005, the crimes committed by the traitor remained unsolved. In another letter, he confessed everything himself. It was a shock to society, an exemplary, believing father turned out to be a brutal killer. The criminal was only interested in fame and no remorse followed from him. Andrei Chikatilo. Andrei Chikatilo is recognized as one of the most dangerous serial killers for the entire existence of the USSR, and possibly in the world as a whole. This terrible man committed more than 60 murders of various people, including women, girls, and boys. This dangerous maniac had the tendencies of a pedophile and was also a cannibal. He had been hiding from law enforcement for many years, which gave him the opportunity to commit even more murders. The psychiatrist who examined him confirmed that Chikatilo is completely sane. But many are inclined to believe that such a statement was made in order for the criminal to avoid a psychiatric hospital after the trial. The maniac was executed by firing squad in the back of the head. The prerequisites that a person has become such a dangerous criminal with terrible inclinations lie in the very childhood of Chikatilo. His mother periodically beat him and humiliated him. In addition, he grew up on the territory of Ukraine during the Holodomor, when there were cases of cannibalism. There is a version that his older brother was eaten by his own parents. All this left an imprint on the psyche of the future maniac. Subsequently, he started a family, was considered a normal member of society, but in fact led a double life. That's all for today. Like and write in the comments if you want the second part. Subscribe so as not to miss new videos.